Hello everyone, welcome back to another vegan and gluten-free recipe on this channel, and happy Thanksgiving week to my American viewers. To celebrate this food-packed feasting holiday, I decided to make a classic dessert. It's actually my favorite dessert for Thanksgiving. It's this pumpkin pie. The way I've structured this episode is I'm first gonna make the pie crust for the pumpkin pie, and then I'll make the filling, put it all together, and then at the end I'll show you the final result. Let's first go through the 5 ingredients in the pie crust. First up, there's 1.5 cups of almond flour. There's also 3/4 of a cup of this King Arthur brand gluten-free all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of flaxseed meal, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and finally 9 tablespoons of water. Now let's go through the 6 steps of the pie crust recipe. It's courtesy of Nora Cooks. I've linked that recipe down below in the description box. As you probably know by this point, I'm a huge fan of Nora Cooks. I've featured her countless times on this channel. For step number 1, I'll make what's called a flax egg, and the way you do that is to mix 1 tablespoon of the flaxseed meal and 3 tablespoons of water in a small bowl, and I'll just stir it together and let that sit for 5 minutes to thicken. For step number 2, I'll combine the almond flour, the gluten-free flour, and the salt in a separate bowl. For step number 3, I'll add the flax egg and the remaining 6 tablespoons of water into the flour mixture and stir everything together until the pie crust dough is well combined. For step number 4, I'll use my hands to form the pie crust dough into a ball. For step number 5, I'll roll out the pie crust dough into a 12-inch circle using a rolling pin. And the way I'll do that is to first lay out a piece of parchment paper here on my countertop, and I'll sprinkle it with a little bit of gluten-free flour to make sure that the pie crust dough doesn't stick to the parchment paper. And then for step number 6, the last step of the pie crust dough, I'll carefully transfer the pie crust dough round into my pie dish. I'll use my fingers to press the dough into the pie dish, and then I'll poke a bunch of holes in the bottom of the pie crust using a fork. We've covered everything for the pie crust dough, so without further ado, let's get started making the flax egg, which is step number 1. Now that the pie crust is all ready to go, I have it in the pie dish just off to the side. Let's get started making the pumpkin pie filling. There's 8 ingredients going into the filling, so let's go through each of them one by one super quickly. First up, as you may have guessed, there's 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. There's also 1 cup of this unsweetened coconut cream, 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar, 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, which for those of you who don't know is simply white granulated sugar with some molasses in it too, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 teaspoon of this Vietnamese cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, and finally 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This pumpkin pie filling is seriously so easy. There's only 4 recipe steps, and surprise, surprise, it's also courtesy of Nora Cooks. For step number 1, I'll whisk together all 8 of these ingredients in a large glass bowl until the pumpkin pie filling mixture is smooth and well combined. For step number 2, I'll pour the filling into my prepared pie crust. For step number 3, I'll bake the pumpkin pie for 1 hour at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And then for step number 4, the last step of this pumpkin pie filling recipe, I'll remove the pumpkin pie from my oven and let it cool for about 30 minutes on my stovetop. And then after that, I'll cover the pie and place it into my fridge to cool and set overnight. That's everything you need to know about this seriously piece of pie pumpkin pie filling recipe. So let's get started whisking together all 8 of these ingredients. Now that the pumpkin pie is baking in my oven for the next hour, and then after that it's gonna go in my fridge overnight, I'm gonna close out this section of the episode. So don't go anywhere because you'll get to see the finished pumpkin pie in just a few seconds. All right, you guys, it's time to see the final product, the final pumpkin pie. It's sitting nice and pretty in my fridge, so I'm gonna grab that as well as some whipped cream, dairy-free whipped cream. It's actually made with coconut milk. And for those of you wondering exactly what kind of whipped cream I use, it's this coconut milk Ready Whip. Just about there. I'm gonna grab a little knife too to cut into the pie. So now we are ready to go. Let's reveal this beautiful pumpkin pie. I decided to cover it in cling wrap. That is looking gorgeous, my friends. I'll give you a close-up. So as you can probably tell, the top of the pie is pretty moist. That's because when I covered it in cling wrap, there was some condensation that formed when I placed it in the fridge. I don't have a problem with it, but if you want to, you can totally take a paper towel and gently dab some of the moisture off the top of the pie. And now to cut the pie, what I'm gonna do is actually trace some cutting lines on the surface, and I am planning to share this with family, maybe even freeze some of it and keep it for Thanksgiving, so that's one less thing that I have to prep in the kitchen on a holiday. It's looking like it's holding its shape. Got a little messy on the end, but I'm happy with this overall. Whipped cream time, can't forget. Such a highlight of any Thanksgiving. Yay! Isn't that just adorable? Here, let me give you a close-up of this individual piece. The pie crust kept its shape pretty well, and even though you can't really see the bottom of the crust because a lot of the pumpkin filling carried through to the bottom when I was slicing, you can see part of it down there, and it looks like it's nice and firm and got a good bake on it. I'm also happy with how this filling is holding up. I wasn't sure if it was gonna be like really soft and almost soupy. It looks soft, but you know, it's still holding its shape, which was what I wanted. And now after all this work, it's time to enjoy. I want to get all of it, the filling, the crust, and the whipped topping. So cheers. Let's see what this pie tastes like. I'm so happy with that. Whenever I eat pumpkin pie, I instantly am transported back to previous Thanksgiving holidays. I've eaten it at my parents' house, which is where I typically celebrate Thanksgiving. I feel like my grandparents, though, have also served pumpkin pie either for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. It's just such a festive, flavorful, beautiful dessert to enjoy at a family gathering. I love the cinnamon, the color of it, the consistency, the sweetness. It's such a quintessential holiday season sweet treat. Well, everyone, that concludes this special edition Thanksgiving holiday recipe episode. Let me know what you thought of this pumpkin pie down in the comments section. I love to hear from all of you, and I make a point of responding to every single one of your comments. Before I close out this episode, I want to highlight two recipes I've made previously that feature this same exact pie crust from Nora Cooks. One of them is a chocolate tofu pie that I made back in March of this year in honor of Pie Day, and the second one is a tofu veggie quiche that I made for Easter. I've linked both of those recipes for you at the end of this video, so definitely stick around and check them out. Take care, my lovely foodies. Eat well, especially those of you celebrating Thanksgiving this week, and I'll see you in the next episode on this channel. Bye!